Zofia Zayons has cancelled her gym membership, physio sessions, streaming services, and has stopped eating out. But that wasn't enough for the 29-year-old to stay on top of the rising cost of living. So she decided to pick up extra work on top of her full-time job as a venue manager.
I know that what I'm doing right now isn't going to be sustainable forever. Yeah, my next steps are a little unclear about how I'll continue to manage into the future if the cost of living does stay as high as it is now.
Zofia purchased her first home last year. What she didn't consider was that in addition to her mortgage repayments, everything else in her life was about to get more expensive too.
So it's coming at me from all angles at the moment. I see it at the grocery store. I'm really conscious about when I get in the car, really conscious about when I turn on the heater, all those little things. It's always just sitting in the back of your mind. You don't really expect that after studying 2 university degrees, taking on further study in your field after that as well, that 5 years into my career now, that you get to the point that you do have to take on extra work. It's kind of frustrating.
For 25-year-old Mira Celestianto, the decision of whether she should take a financial risk and return to university to upskill is a difficult one.
The idea of taking on further debt and also cutting down my working hours really felt like it wasn't the right decision at a point in time when, cost of living was rising so much. So I think there's some really important questions about whether increasing economic pressures do cause a bit of a deterrent for people to pursue further study and the potential consequences of that.
The rising cost of living is also upending other parts of Mira's life.
Hai Tante, apa kabar?
Usually she travels to Indonesia as often as possible to visit family in Java.
Obviously since the pandemic and then with these increasing economic pressures, that's starting to feel not impossible, but definitely increasingly out of reach. I'm sure that's probably a pretty common experience for a lot of diaspora folk. I certainly know that I'll be able to see them again, but it does get sort of harder and harder, I suppose, to justify making an expense like that.
On Melbourne's western fringe, as costs continue to rise, one migrant family is considering whether to stay in Australia.
I think if it gets worse, particularly the fuel and situation, we're no better off, sort of, compared to where we came from, So that kind of raises that migration question: are we really being better off, or do we move just closer to the family? That way, you feel more comfortable.
Vinu and Akila immigrated from India 6 years ago on skilled worker visas and only recently moved into their newly built home.
I think new migrants in Australia are kind of in a unique situation that's hardly understood. The reasons is that a lot of them tend to have like 2 families, that they need to manage. And in my situation, it was particularly challenging because I had to support my family here, but also my parents back in India.
With rising fuel and grocery costs, Vinu isn't sure what the future holds.
The cost of living that we are currently seeing just eats into the savings, of what we were expecting, and that has a kind of a longer-term impact of your financial goals.
As Australians do it tough, one personal financial expert suggests the best place to start is by closely watching where you're spending your money.
Budgeting can be a scary word for some people, but it's really about making a list, doing an audit of where your money's going, understanding all of your financial commitments, being really honest about that. So look through your phone and your spending and your bank statements and understand where you're spending your money on. Small changes can make a big difference over time. So looking at your needs versus what are the nice to haves and your priorities. How much money are you spending on groceries versus takeaway and going out to restaurants? People should be considering all the ways in which they can cut costs.
Sharing costs and downsizing is another way to reduce spending.
What is your transport arrangements like? Can you be saving costs there? You know, can you be getting out on your bike more or carpooling? All of those little changes, and even if they're, you know, a change once a week in one of those behaviors, can make a big difference over time and give you a little bit more money either to put into your savings or to cover some higher costs.